Perfect. So first of all, welcome here. Glad to see all the packaging and drug professionals arrive here at Pharmapack in Paris. It's good to see that we are capable of hosting interesting trade shows and fairs here. So just brief introduction for myself. As you can tell by my incredible accent, I'm French, living in London. My name is Antoine Baschiera, and I'm the CEO of Early Metrics, which is a rating agency for startup and SMEs. And I will be responsible of this afternoon session. So in terms of agenda, just going to try by myself with a brief keynote, a quick introduction about where the startup are going when it comes to e-health and digitalization of packaging and the drug and e-health market. After that, we'll have the chance to have two great speakers. First one will be Nicolas telling us a bit more around how behavioral change can impact the decision-making that we are having into the health and the drug industry. And then a more, I would say, hands-on presentation from Alex that will tell us a bit more how innovation when it comes to drug delivery and drug packaging can be feasible from a more industrial and supply chain performance. So that myself, quick keynote, 20 minutes, then two great speakers, and then we will actually see some example of health drug packaging innovation with a pitch contest from 4 startups. Okay? So thank you very much for that, and let's kick off by my quick keynote. So brief introduction about who we are, Early Metrics, and why Pharmapack organization have been asking me to moderate this afternoon session. And then, of course, trying to give you some meaningful content around where startups are going, where element of the value chain of drugs and health they are trying to disrupt and to innovate in. So who we are in a nutshell, I founded Early Metrics 3 years ago, understanding that the startup ecosystem was becoming more complex every day. So more startups, more investors, but also more corporate decision makers, enterprises like yourself that are looking to innovate, not just by themselves with traditional internal R&D models, but also in engaging with new stakeholders, namely startup and SMEs. So we saw that the startup ecosystem was becoming more complex and needed some new tools to help these decision makers to properly engage with startups. We saw a gap in the market whereby there were no rating agency, especially dedicated to startup and SMEs. And so we founded Early Metrics with the ambition to become the first rating agency dedicated to rating startup and SMEs. So I founded a company 2 years ago with one co-founder called Sebastian, and 3 years after, we are slightly less than 50 people between London, Paris, Tel Aviv, and more recently Berlin, that we have opened in the late 2017. We have rated nearly 2,000 companies on behalf of 150 clients. Some of them are equity investors, so private equity firms, venture capitalists, so people that invest in startup. But most of our clients are large corporates that are using Early Metrics to decide on how and when to engage with startups and SMEs for their innovation strategy. So some of you with a potential financial background, you know traditional rating agency, people like Moody's, Standard & Poor's, Fitch. I think that at least in 2008, you have heard some of these names in the press. So what are the differences between Early Metrics and traditional rating agency? First, what we rate. So we analyze startup and SMEs doing between 0 and 20 million in revenue. So not only very early stage company, but also more mature scale-ups or companies that have already started to have a fast development. The second difference, which might be the most structuring one, is the business model. I don't know if you have it in mind, but when Novartis or Sanofi receives a rating from Standard & Poor's, Sanofi or Novartis are paying for that rating with all the issue when it comes to conflict of interest where Moody's or Standard & Poor's, you sign them a check and then sign you the rating. And we saw what happened in 2008. Early Metrics, we have overturned that business model. So we analyze the companies for free. So all the startups and the SMEs that we are rating are not our clients. Our clients are the decision makers that are using our rating to make decisions. So investor and corporates. And last but not least, the question was, what do we want to rate? How do we want to assess startup and SMEs? By looking at their balance sheet, like traditional rating agency would do, you will see that some of the great companies that we are going to see later, they don't even have maybe sometimes 3 balance sheet because they are younger than 3 years. So traditional financial analysis was not relevant when it comes to rating startup and SMEs. So we abandoned the credit risk model of traditional agencies in order to focus on the potential of growth, which implies that we don't look at financial, but mainly at extra financial elements when it comes to rating a startup. So that's for us. Who do we work for? So very proud of our clients as we are a young company ourselves, maybe not a startup anymore, but quite one. So you see we've got quite an industry agnostic coverage, but we are quite proud to say that we work for most of the big pharma or FMCG players, so people such as Servier, Teva, Sanofi, even on the more cosmetics in the FMCG space, and also completely other sectors, financial institutions, industrial players, transport and mobility. It's also quite strong for us. So 200 clients, quite proud of the size, and this is what allowed us to have this interesting growth from 0 to 50 people without raising money in the last couple of years. So that's it. Enough about early metrics. I just wanted to give you an overview of why we have been asked to moderate. So we know the startup and corporate topic quite well, most of all when it comes to health, which covers quite a large share of our client base. So let's jump into the content that hopefully will be interesting, and the health tech. So what are startups doing when it comes to health, and most of all to digitalizing or innovating into the health system? And we call the presentation from one system, most of all in Latin countries or countries like France, Italy, with a very strong social model where all health was usually carried by one model, public sector oriented and so on, to more and more personalized solutions. So that would be my today 10 to 15 minutes. Oh, sorry. So we have identified, if we look at the companies that we have rated in the healthcare sector, which are around 300 to 350 companies, we can classify them by 4 main clusters.